time for Lykken on Lending.
Welcome, everybody. Good to have you with us.
Welcome to Lykken on Lending, a weekly mortgage market update providing up-to-the-minute information on interest rates, loan programs, and hot industry news, all related to the mortgage industry. Brought to you by Transformational Mortgage Solutions. To participate in today's program, our guest call-in line is 646-716-4972. And now here's your host of Lykken on Lending, David Lykken.
Let's begin.
Hey, listeners, I'm excited to have a special guest on today. His name is Tim Davis, and he is with Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group. Very successful individual. He has had a great career as a coach and working in so many areas. And this is an example, for those of you that are business owners listening to this, of the importance of having an internal coach inside of your company. Tim is that, but also he does things outside of Atlantic Bay by permission with Atlantic Bay, in agreement with Atlantic Bay. So we can't wait to get into it. Tim, welcome to the program.
It is absolutely fantastic to be here. I really appreciate you having me on, David.
Well, joining me in this interview is my co-host, Mark Helm. And so, Mark, thanks for dialing in and being here with us as well, friend.
Glad to be here, David.
You bet. I'm reading your bio, Tim, and one of the things that leaped out is Tim is or was an at-risk kid from the housing projects that got introduced to the mortgage business. Tim, that just sounds like such an interesting background that you came out of. Sounds like poverty and at risk. Talk a little bit about that. Give us a little bit story about your journey into mortgage lending.
So yeah, my father, when I was 3 years old, my father passed away. So my mom raised me. And the challenge she faced was twofold. She had a 6th grade education and a prescription drug problem. So it was sort of a compounded issue, right? So she did the best she could. We lived on $618 a month in the housing projects in a small town in Kentucky. And at 16 years old, I just walked out the door and went and got a job, right? I started bagging groceries at a grocery store. Because back then, David, when you bagged someone's groceries and you took them to the car, you know what they gave you? Tips.
Tips.
They gave you money.
Money.
Yeah. So I was like, I've never gotten this much money for her. So I started doing that at a young age. And then, you know, a few years later, I decided to leave that world. When I got out of high school, a guidance counselor said, you should go to college. And I was like, oh my gosh, never even thought about that. And somebody said, how did you get out of the projects? And my answer is, I walked out. It was not a gated community. We weren't prisoners.
That's good.
I just walked out and went to college. And you fast forward a few years later, I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and I was actually lending money at 24% interest and taking people's couches as collateral at this small finance. When a buddy of mine called one day and he said, hey, you should get in the mortgage industry. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I have an efficiency apartment. I don't even own the furniture. And you want me to lend people money for their couches? And he said, no, you'll do fantastic. And he told me what he was making. And I don't even know if I hung up the phone. I think I just got in the car and drove over. And they hired me on the spot and gave me the best piece of advice I ever got in this business. I still use it to this day. My mentor at the time said, hey, Tim, you got one job. Go find one customer every day. And I was like, that's it? And he's like, yes, stay away from distractions and find one customer every day. And I still use that to this day.
Well, that's good. And you've really developed that one piece of advice into a whole coaching curriculum, which we're going to get into a little bit later as we get into this discussion. But I'm really interested in have you tell us about the circle of referrals. What is a circle of referrals? I like the concept. I've heard of other consultants talking about that. What is your concept of that?
So I've just been blessed to be around a lot of large producers throughout the years that were very consistent in their business, and everybody wants to know the secret, right? Like, what does this person do? What does that person do? And over the years, I just looked at it and I said, really, they do 3 things. And it became the circle of referrals. And what they do on a monthly basis is they educate the market, referral partners, and they do education. So I call it educate. And then the second thing they do on a consistent basis is they appreciate. So their business partners, they appreciate them. They appreciate their customers very tangibly, whether it's events or note cards or simple phone calls. They always have something to appreciate them with. And then lastly, David, they have a big ask. They are always asking for those opportunities. And when I really sat back and looked at it and said, how do you simplify what all these folks are doing? It came down to that very simple circle of referrals. You meet people and put them through that process, and it never ends, right? You just keep
That's
going.
so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, I'll come over to you and actually ask part B of that question, which is how does it work and why is it so critical now? I'll let you go into that part of the question, which is part B of that.
Tim, the first thing I want to say to you is that, and David will probably be surprised when he hears this, but I have never been on a call with someone whose life and career, early career, parallels mine as close as yours does. I mean, I will not take away from your presentation today, but I'll just tell you this. My mother finished the 3rd grade. My dad finished the 6th grade. I was working in a Kentucky Fried Chicken at 13 years old. And so I feel your pain. I know what you went through. And I just salute you, sir, for staying with it and getting to where you are today. And so if there's anybody can relate to where you've been and where you're going, it's me. And I just wanted to say that real quick.
That's awesome. That's great, Mark. I always say adversity does one of 2 things. It'll either make you or break you, right?
Yeah. That's right. That's right. So relative to what we're talking about here, and we talk about the circle referrals you have and how does it work and why is it critical right now? Can you go into a little bit in depth of what makes it critical? What are the critical elements of it? And how do you see it changing as you go through the process? Because I'm very much familiar, and anytime we develop something that we use, it is life-changing because it modifies itself as it goes through the process and you learn more what you're interfacing with people about. Can you share that kind of thought process with us?
Sure. Yeah. I think this is really a leadership issue too, right? You have a lot of leaders out there running mortgage companies or in the field leading teams, and they're looking for solutions for people, right? And what people really need more than ever are clarity, focus, and a plan that's simple. Simple clarity, simple focus, a simple plan. And when you look at the circle of referrals, it encompasses 3 things: educate, appreciate, and ask, just like we discussed. And to answer your question, Mark, is what goes into those categories? Well, it varies from personality to personality, but it really is all about the relationship. So let's cover the educate part first. There's multitude of ways to educate people, right? Today, we've got all this technology. You can have a show like yours, right? I mean, you could have podcasts that you educate people through. You could do videos and video marketing and the reels that are out there right now and do education through that. And I think those are great ways to get exposure in the marketplace. And then you can host events. We call them lunch and learns, right? You've probably done those in your career. I know I've done plenty of them. That's another way to educate people. Or you can simply pick up the phone and call people and go, hey, I want to share with you what's happening in the marketplace and talk with you about it. Those are ways to educate people. And I think why that's so important, Mark, is when you educate others, you grow in your influence. And we all need more of that, right? We all need more influence to help people say yes to us so we can serve them. So there's always ways to change, right? Back when I got started, I had a shoebox, which was my database. I had birthday cards in there. I logged your birthday in my Outlook, and I would reach in the shoebox and send you a card, right? Today, we have all these CRMs. Back then, I would go to an office and present, which I think is still viable today. But now I've got all this technology to do videos and the like, what we just discussed. So there's a number of ways that you can educate people. And as technology evolves and things like that, we'll have new ways to get the education out there. So I think that answers your question about how does it evolve. The appreciate part, I think, still remains very tactical. Handwritten note cards. I have in fact, you may can see the bottom part of it. There's a clock on my wall behind me that was sent to me by a very good friend, unexpected. He just asked for help one time. I gladly helped him, right? That help turned into a really large account for him. And I was happy for him. But he said, I appreciate it so much. I know you're a huge hockey fan of the Nashville Predators, and sent me this Nashville Predators Jack Daniel's barrel clock. Now, I'm not saying you have to go that extreme. I thought that was way too extreme. I almost didn't want to accept it. But if somebody's a fan of a sports team, send them an article about that sports team winning, right? Just let them know that you really appreciate them on a deep level. So there's a number of ways that you can do that now with technology, but I still don't want to get away from just personal one-on-one. And Mark, the last thing is I think you got to have a big ask, ASK. I think people need to come up to you and go, man, you have a really big ask. Did you know that? And that is simply asking for opportunities. If you educate enough and you appreciate enough, I think that's the currency where you've deposited enough in that personal relationships bank account, you're entitled to a withdrawal. And I
And that
found
works-
over the years, if
And
you
that
didn't
works
have
in
it,
any
you'll get it.
environment. Yeah, that works in any environment, and regardless of the seasons, correct?
Correct. And I think that people don't ask enough. They think simply educating and appreciating entitles them to opportunities. And I look at it like this. If you take money to the bank and you deposit it in there, but you never ask them to withdraw it, they don't call you up and say, hey, David, you want to take some of your money out today? I've never got that call. I'm sure you guys have never got that call either, right? So when you make these deposits into people, if you don't ask, you're not going to get a return and you can grow frustrated.
That's a really great point. Mark, do you have anything else you want to follow up on
Yeah,
that?
I want to comment about one of your comments. I learned a long time ago that, and I've tried to hear it in the present, that you can't let social media overtake the interpersonal relationships you have with people. And your idea about sending the notes to people, I learned that probably about 30 years ago in the industry. A guy I work with had some note cards printed up with his name on top of them. Anytime he read about one of his friends doing something or heard about it, he sent him a little congratulatory note and all that. And he was always really good about sending thank you notes for people he thought had done something to help him. And I love it today because my daughter's instilling with my grandchildren, and my daughter-in-law is instilling with my grandchildren, the idea of thank you notes or saying please and thank you to people. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact that you developed something like that when you started off, where you had that shoebox, I can see it right now, and seeing you followed up on things and sending it out. This gives a whole core foundation of what you're all about. And I really appreciate that. And I salute you for that, sir.
Thank you, Mark.
In fact, on that note, when you're talking about simple notes and we're talking about technology and how it's advanced things, I want to give a shout out to a good friend of mine, a new friend, Rick Elmore, who's president, founder, CEO and founder of Simply Noted. You know, there's tools out there right now where you can just type in a note and it'll send out automatically a handwritten note, and it's in your writing. If you spend a little extra money to have your writing put into their computers, it'll absolutely follow with amazing accuracy. It looks like your handwritten, and it's actually a pen that he's developed, a machine that puts a pen to paper. So go check out Simply Noted, and you want to get a hold of Rick Elmore, and all I ask is to just tell him I sent you your way. Very cool what that technology is. But I think that those basic things, I mean, we were talking about, Mark was asking about what works now, that it works now or it works at any time in the past, and it will continue to work at any point in the future. And a lot of these tips you get into your book. So tell our listeners a little bit about your book. And you talk about 6 keys to the mortgage business. And I'd love to have you touch on that if you would, sir. Sure.
Yeah, it's a very simple read. Most people can read it in probably 20 minutes. But I'm a kind of a get to the point sort of guy. But when you get into the 6 keys of the mortgage business, key number 1 would be exposure. I don't think any of us have enough of exposure. I think we could go into any city and ask agents about, do you know David? Do you know Mark? And there's probably going to be some, to our surprise, that have never heard our name before, right? Which means we need to get more exposure. Number 2 is expansion. And I think we've seen a lot of that in the last 2 years. COVID put people into their homes, and I saw more loan officers get licensed in other states than I've ever seen before. And that's one example of expansion. Other could be more referral partners or going a county over outside of where you normally work, things of that nature. We have to expand our business. The third one, which I think has a lot of opportunity for people right now, is called acquisition. You know, we're in a marketplace where there are people considering retiring. But what do you do when you retire? Do you just walk away and have nothing to show for it? Or would a younger loan officer keep you on the team, maybe part-time, and could you earn some residuals from your database and your connections that you've built up all the years versus just walking away from it? You know, we can grow our businesses one person at a time, which I'm a big fan of, or we can double overnight by acquiring somebody else's business that's retiring and give them maybe some.
I've never heard that one. I've been in this for 50 years. I've actually never heard anyone ever talk about that point. That's a really good one.
Yeah, nobody ever talks about it, but I did it. I when I retired out of originating full time and coached, I sold my database and I was paid out over a 3-year period on its production. So I still had skin in the game to a degree, right? And then the originator that purchased it from me did extremely well. So I went through it, and then we during that time, I'm like, hey, let's acquire some other people's that are retiring or getting out of the business. But nobody talks about it, David. You're right. I don't know why.
I don't know why. That's a brilliant idea. I mean, Mark,
Excellent concept, because you're adding with the coaching piece, you really added another flavor to it you can put in there. And that's your mentorship of that person, bringing them along. Even though they're working with your contacts and all, you're still a person there they can call and talk to about people and processes, and really benefit from the work they're doing on your database with your input into it. So it could work really, really well.
It really can. And I guess we've never really thought about it. We're taught that this is transactional. Like we are, we're broke every day until we find a customer. And that's not true, right? So I think if you work that and you really look for those opportunities, they're out there. So the fourth area would be offering and selling skills, which I think got dampened a lot during COVID, because how did you really have to sell anybody? It was answering the phone, and who cared if they left, because there was 10 more calls behind them, right? But now we really have to be educators and sell people on why they should choose us over someone else, and really have offers out there. And this is something that I've always wondered why the mortgage business doesn't do more of. If you go to the mall, any time of the year, there's a sale. It's the Columbus Day sale. It's the Veterans Day sale. It's the wind blew from the north sale. They'll make up something to have a sale, right? But we don't have sales, right? But I always ran sales in my business. I'm like, hey, it's the fourth quarter appraisal lender credit special, and you can get a lender credit on your file if you close in the fourth quarter with us. But it's ways to get conversations started. And it's speaking of offers, follow up. How many years have we talked about the follow up in this business? How key and critical it is.
Yeah, it's pathetic what we normally do, but it's such a good point.
It's so needed right now. And then lastly is investment. And that encompasses not just a financial investment, making sure that you're financially sound, which I think you owe to your customers. If your finances are out of order, how do you really give an advice on the largest purchase to someone else? So I think you've got to be financially smart. And I think in this market race right now, you need to invest in yourself. I know your leaders want you to invest in yourself. And grow your business through smart investing. And then the other part of investing is in your personal relationships and your health. I think we've learned the last 2 years, we need to be healthy as we can, right?
Yep. Especially Mark and I at our age, we're really recognizing the importance of that. That's why I've got a gym in my home. I work out constantly every day. And I think it's so important.
This last question is, to me, one of the key questions that was on the list. It's basically asking you what 2 areas every loan officer should focus on. Fine tune it down to 2 things. What are the top 2 things, or what are the 2 things that every loan officer should focus on?
Yeah, I think if we talked about the 6 keys, they need more exposure and expansion right now. That's 2 keys. But in all reality, they need to focus on their personal growth right now. I mean, you're only going to go so far as you personally grow. Mark, your background and my background is proof of that, right? With our family and where they got to versus where you were able to get for yourself. That came through personal growth. So I think that is incredibly important to focus on right now. And that even includes your mental health as you go through the marketplace. To a lot of people, it's brand new to them. They've never seen a 6 or 7% rate. I got in this business at 11%, so I think that personal growth and that mental health is super important. And then the other area that I think that they really need to focus on is being productive every day. We went through 2 years of people kind of sitting in their pajamas, taking phone calls, and we got away from actually getting out in the field and shaking hands and kissing babies and having those meetings. And I think that's an area we all need to improve in and get back in the habit of doing that.
That's a great point. Now you have a magazine, the Originators Guide magazine. I've got 3 copies of it here. When you and I met in Nashville at the National MBA conference, you had a booth there. I stashed these up and I read them on the way home, and they're really excellent magazines. Talk about them. What's your focus, and why do you publish them?
Yeah, well, it goes back to the circle of referrals. Quite frankly, key number 1 is to educate, right? And how do you position yourself as an educator? And I do it a number of different ways, but there was really a gap in the marketplace. And what happened was during COVID, we published a marketing magazine for loan officers to give to real estate agents. And it was a physical copy, and everybody kept pushing me, Tim, why is it not digital? And why is it not digital? And I said, because if it's digital, it's hidden behind a computer screen. If it's physical, it sits on somebody's coffee table. It sits on their desk. You're always top of mind. And who wants to go to their mailbox and get another bill? No, they want to go to their mailbox and be rewarded with a nice magazine. So I noticed there was a gap in the marketplace of a printed magazine for loan officers that would help them with strategies and techniques from their peers and industry thought leaders, that was affordable and could get in their hands and always stay with them and just be a physical copy. And nobody was doing it. So I said, hey, that's an opportunity for us to educate people. And we started it.
And it's quality. It's a quality magazine, the quality of the paper, the quality of the printing. I mean, it's just, something to be proud of. And I'm really thrilled to get, and the content. I mean, great to have paper and all that stuff, but it really comes down to what is in there. And one of my favorite articles I read on that is one of the people I have the privilege of coaching, your boss and a good friend, is Emily Farley. I love how Emily talked authentically in this and gave some great tips. So I encourage people to pick up every one of your publications, every one of the or the monthly subscriptions. I want to talk about that in a minute, but get Emily's because it was really, really excellent. How can people get signed up for your magazine?
It's simple. Our website's theoriginatorsguide.com. They just go right over there. They can listen to our podcast or click on the button that says magazine. And right now, I think if they purchase a subscription, we give them a free t-shirt on top of it that will help their sales.
Hey, good. I'm going to have to tease you about this. When I saw Tim at his booth, he's wearing this really colorful blazer, and it was like, it's signature to you. It's on a lot of your content out there. What's the story behind the blazer and all the color that's so colorful?
Well, when I was originating, I would teach a class called personal branding, and I still teach that today. And we would bring agents in, and we have a saying in the class that same as lame. And so if you're not in the conversation, same as lame. And if you're not in the conversation, you really don't have a chance. You've got to get in the conversation and build rapport. So how do you create conversations out there? Some people are shy, and I started off years ago with colorful socks, and I would label my socks. This is my Monday morning meeting sock, and this is my Tuesday big deal sock. And I started noticing other people would start posting socks and tagging me like, oh, Tim, look, I got crazy colored socks. And I thought, well, you're still in my thunder, right? So now we're the same. So I found this jacket, and I do what anybody else does. I went to social media and posted a picture to see what everybody else thought. And so I said, I'm buying it and I'm going to start wearing it. And nobody else has shown up in a jacket like that. So
I might understand why not. So Mark, you got to see this coat. It's a coat of many colors. It is something to behold. I mean, in fact, I was talking to Emily. I was texting her actually, and I go, "Where's Tim's booth?" It says it's on aisle such and such. I walked by your booth so many times because I should have missed it. I don't know why, but it was the couple of things the way it was. It was just so dramatic. But I really love the energy that what you bring when we were to gather. You do something which is a daily brief 3-minute podcast. And that really captured me. He said, Dave, would you like to do a podcast right now? And I go, where's the booth? How are we going to do this? He said, no. And it was really effective about communicating frequently and effectively to your base. Talk about that. How did you come up with the idea, and what would you recommend others to do like that?
So another one of the concepts we teach in our branding classes is frequency of visibility increases influence. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to do anything social wise and you're only going to do it once a week, you're going to delay your ability to get more exposure, right? Look at Gary V, right? How many videos does he post?
Yeah, Gary V. Yeah.
Right. But who has time to do all this stuff? So I did exactly what you've done, David. I bought all this equipment. I had fancy microphones. I looked like I was going to record a record in Nashville. I had it all set up, and I did absolutely nothing because after I bought everything, I was intimidated by all of it.
Right.
And then I realized something, okay, that in this life, there are no rules. We have these rules in our mind, like, oh, if I write a book, it has to be hardcover and in Barnes & Noble. That's not true. You can write a book and publish it on Amazon, and it can be a picture book. It doesn't even have to have text in it. And that hit me about frequency of visibility and simplicity. And I found an app. It's free. It's called Anchor. Their website is anchor.fm. Anybody can sign up. Anybody can create a podcast. And then I realized there are no rules on podcasts. Nobody said the National Association of Podcasters of America, which I'm not even sure is a place, but let's just say it is. never said that your podcast has to be 30 minutes and distributed to 30 channels in order for it to be legitimate. Nobody's ever said that.
Oh.
So I found this little app and realized that the microphone on your iPhone is incredible. It's just really good. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. And 2 years ago, I started it. And because I'm busy and running a lot of things, I said, you know what? I need a hook. Why would somebody listen to my podcast? So my hook was get a coaching tip Monday through Friday in under 3 minutes or less. And that was my marketing hook on it. And so I said, I can do a tip every day in under 3 minutes. And most of the time, I'm just going to be honest, David, I'm in the backyard letting the dogs go to the restroom in the morning when I record the podcast.
I love that. It's the spontaneity and the inspiration. Now, I'm not sure the dogs are bringing the inspiration, but maybe being outside in the fresh nature and getting the fresh thoughts and is doing that. Mark, it was just brilliant. When I look at what Tim has done, especially, I think part of your story that's so heartwarming is where you came from, what you came out of. And someone who's listening to this, I'm real passionate about bringing the next generation of mortgage bankers into the industry. And what would you recommend to someone who is considering getting into the industry? And many say, why would you get into it right now? It's terrible. There's no business out there. Why would you say to someone today that they should get in the mortgage business?
Well, it's incredibly rewarding, right? In a number of aspects. I mean, you obviously have the financial reward of it. You have the freedom and flexibility if you can grow your business correctly after putting in a lot of work. But here's what I said. And I said this at a luncheon to real estate agents one time. We think we sell money and we think we sell houses, and that's just not true. What we do is we provide an opportunity for a family to have those pictures around the Christmas tree in December. What we do is we provide a family to have a backyard to put the swing set in, right? We're memory creators. We're providing the funds or the contract to help them create those future memories. Listen, growing up in the housing projects, I'm sure Mark can relate. I didn't have my own room. We didn't have our own house. We lived in the housing projects, you know. We help people create wealth and a future, but beyond all of that, over the next several months, we just got out of Halloween, we're coming into Thanksgiving, we're heading into Christmas. Take a look at your social media and look at all the pictures of the families gathered around tables. That's what we're part of. So if you want to be part of something that makes a difference, that's still the American dream, that can be rewarded financially and freedom to you, I think it's a great career.
Yeah, I always refer to mortgage lending as the fourth most transformative thing you can do for someone's life. Mark, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I'm telling you that you hit the nail on the head. You're selling family, you're selling pride, you're selling self-actualization, all those things that make a person successful and have a great family and build that family for the future so that those folks can be successful too. And I salute you for that. I would like to circle back on two things you said because I think they're so important. I want to make a point about them. When you talked about your basically the two areas and whatnot, and you talked about folks, sitting in their pajamas and taking applications or talking on the phone and one thing, that was so true. And I think that David and I, being students of politics like we are, and we talked about politics a lot, what we found out from politicians, the successful politicians run for office and win, and they keep on campaigning after they won because they're campaigning for the next election. Those that stop and don't do anything again to 2 weeks before the next election are going to be the losers and things. And that's like a loan officer. They got to stay with it. And when you're giving all these loan officers out there, these originator guides with cues and things and tips to follow, you're basically helping them because you're keeping them on their toes. And so I see the formula that you developed and the things you've done of having a great impact on the industry. I salute you for what you're doing. And it's good to get to know you.
Thank you, Mark. That's too kind of you, brother. I appreciate it.
How do people get in touch with your podcast? How do they find it? It's over there on Anchor, but how can people, is there an address? Do you have a unique URL for it?
If you go to the originatorsguide.com, that you can click on the button on the homepage and it'll open up Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and then you can subscribe right away. It's on all the channels, but probably just go on the website's the easiest.
Good. Yeah, it's really positive. One of the things a lot of people say, I see so many loan officers struggling with the work-life balance. You've got a great marriage, an amazing gal. She designed your background there, your home. I love how you talk about your wife. What do you say to those that are struggling with a work-life balance? You coach on that?
I do. I think you have to marry a spouse that's stronger than you that will put you in your place.
Both Mark and I have that. And you have too. Yeah.
Be careful there now.
Angie works out a lot, so I'm just petrified. So I get my butt in gear. No, I think that the problem with our industry is it can be like a drug, and it can become very addictive, right? And when we first start out in the career, we unintentionally paint ourselves in a corner by saying, hey, I'm open 24 hours a day. Here's my cell phone. Call anytime for anything, because we need opportunities. We're unknown. We're trying to get somebody to give us a shot. And so we're open 24/7. Well, unintentionally, that creates a mental problem that we are the center of the world of mortgages later in our careers, right? And then that shows up in our family time. Order for me, I'll have the steak, but I got to step out and take this call. It's my very best agent, right? And it's this initial startup that creates it. So we form this mental picture in our mind of like we're everything to everybody, and until we can break that, right? I know originators that are still to this day working in ridiculous hours, and they have broken homes. Externally, they're successful, right? We applaud them. Hey, you look at that volume, right? Internally, they're broken. And unless somebody comes along and talks to them about that and gets their attention, it's a damaging thing.
Yeah. You just had a very successful event in Nashville, right there in your hometown. And Emily was telling me about it. She goes, this thing, the content, Dave, was outstanding. It's way better than any other sales type conference she'd been at. She says it's going to double next year on the size, and another double again after that. You're like the new mastermind, what you built there. Talk a little bit about that. And why do you think it was so successful? She said it was the content.
Well, I think the number one thing that would make anything successful is you have to put yourself second and your audience first.
That's a great point.
Whether you're doing a podcast, a magazine, a book, or whatever, you have to look at it from your audience perspective, right? What do they want? What do they need? What would they enjoy, right? You should always be second in that. Yeah, you're on the stage or whatever. That's irrelevant, right? It's what they get from it. And so you have to know your market conditions, and you have to bring in content that will help those market conditions. And you design it in such a way that there's comedy and entertainment mixed in with real and emotional, right? It's sort of like crafting a movie, right? There's parts of the movie that you're watching like, oh man, I'm really entertained. And then there's the sad parts. So that all kind of goes into it. It's a little bit deeper than maybe we want to go into here. I think the simple thing to say, David, is you put your audience first and you'll always win.
Tim, one of the things that I'm impressed that Atlantic Bay does, they do so many things well, and it's a great, great company. Encourage anyone to check it out. But they're creating a coaching program within their company. Not everyone does that. Talk about that program and what it is that you do there.
Yeah, thanks. Internal coaching is just really taking hold, I think, in lots of industries right now, and companies are realizing the importance of that, of having a coach that's on the team that can bring a lot of knowledge that the company's already doing. For example, I think it's real simple I've coached people at other organizations, but I don't have access to their numbers. So I'm literally relying on the conversation we're having on the video or on the phone call. When you're internal, you can pull up records, right? You can ask better,
yep.
Right? I can look at someone's year-over-year numbers. I can see their profit margins, their basis points. I can see all that stuff of credit pulls, what got away from us. And now all of a sudden I got a better insight than an external coach can ever have, because I'm looking at data. And if I'm trained in that area, I can ask you really good questions as the leader, really good questions as the originator that cause you to think and get movement in the needle. And I've done this before at other organizations, and I've seen a 42% growth in productivity and production as a result of it.
42%. I'd say that's a well worth investment by Atlantic Bay. So smarts, creds to them for recognizing the need for it, and then creds for them to bring you on board to do that. You did that for another company that's well respected out there. We'll leave the name out, but Atlantic Bay was very smart to bring you on. Well, it's a great conference. How can people learn more about it? Especially, I'm sure you're going to do another one next year. Hopefully so. I want to be at it.
Yeah, I told Emily, I said, let's capitalize on the momentum. Let's do one in the spring. She's
Yeah.
like, what about 12 months from now? And I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen 12 months from now. Let's do one 6 months from now. The Facebook page is Music City Sales Summit. So if you go to, or you can go to the website, I think, musiccitysalessummit.com.
Yeah, it was excellent. It was really well done. Of course, Nashville is one of my favorite places to go for a conference. Anyway, Tim, I can't believe how fast the time has gone here. Mark, are there any questions as we're wrapping this up that you would like to ask, Tim?
No, but I will tell you that this is one of those enjoyable conversations I've had in quite some time.
Yeah.
Really, that's too kind.
We appreciate you taking time, Tim, to join us here and share others. I want to have you back, and I really encourage our listeners to check out the magazine, check out the podcast, and more importantly, get to know Tim on a one-to-one basis. If you're looking for a good coach, when it comes to sales and marketing and how to get out there, Tim is someone you've got to talk to. Encourage that. People can go to your website. Tim, what's the best way?
TheOriginatorsGuide.com. You'll find everything you need over there.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much, Tim.
You've been listening to Lykken on Lending, a weekly mortgage market update with your host, David Lykken of Transformational Mortgage Solutions. Join us next week, and thanks for listening.